Check. Keep it alive through these lines I write. I keep it live cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch a scenario on stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio. Once again with your host, Nick Bernabe, here on UCY.tv. Thank you everyone for tuning in and welcome to the show. Make sure you check us out 5 days a week here on the same station at the same time. We're bringing you all kinds of different perspectives. We have various different hosts every day of the week, and we're trying to break through this corporate media propaganda and bring you guys the real truth, or at least the story that's not being talked about. And hopefully, in an effort to remedy a lot of these horrible things that are going on in the world, because that's partially at least what journalism was supposed to be about. Was to question things, right? And question narratives, keep people honest and all that stuff. So that's what we're hoping to do here at the Anti-Media. If anybody wants to call in tonight, join the show, feel free to give us a ring at 718-717-8296. We're not going to be able to take too many calls tonight because we have a bunch of awesome guests that are going to be joining us here on the Anti-Media Radio. Now I'm joined by our longtime co-host, DB Schwartz. How you doing tonight, man? Okay, maybe DB isn't on the line yet.
Doing good, Nick. Doing good. Sorry, man. Always a little bit of a delay here.
No worries, man. Glad you're with us. We're also joined in the studio by Ali Salam. How's it going, man?
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. We got a lot of news to go over tonight. Of course, this huge story that was going on with Homan Square, and also this LAPD catastrophe where they gunned down this guy yesterday. I'm sure everybody listening probably saw the video. It went extremely viral, extremely quickly. But it was a very, very ugly scene, very aggressive. We're going to go into that in depth with Alyssa later on. She's going to call us from LA, where she went down there and saw what was going on, has some firsthand accounts of what happened last night in LA with this gentleman that was gunned down by the name of Africa. But anyway, the first thing we're going to go into tonight is this whole debacle that we're seeing in the media with Netanyahu, and we have the right-wing media praising Netanyahu and talking crap about Obama. Then you have the left-wing media saying, "Oh, the Republicans are in the wrong; they shouldn't be doing this," but they're saying it for all the wrong reasons. Mm-hmm. So we have Ali here tonight so that we could basically get into the deeper story here of what's really going on with Netanyahu, with Israel, with all of this theater that we're seeing. It's all theatrics. People are trying to say the U.S. has bad ties with Israel and all this crap. And the fact is, the facts are a little different than what is being said. So, Ali, you want to give us a little introduction to what's going on?
Sure. So let's just point out the ties of a lot of these so-called right-wing news agencies. Glenn Beck, Breitbart, right-wing news. They're all tied to various, kind of New World Order type people like Rupert Murdoch or Karl Rove. And Rupert Murdoch has a oil field that he owns in the occupied Golan Heights in Israel, which is technically also disputed with Syria, so it's occupied by Israel. It's also owned by Dick Cheney and Lord Jacob Rothschild of the Federal Reserve founding family. So obviously these news agencies are in the best interest to make that stay in place so they can drill for oil. There's actually a big natural gas reserve underneath Gaza, so they need to get rid of all the pesky human beings out of the way in order to get to that. So they need to make you think that Obama's a Muslim,
I always think it's hilarious when these guys try to claim Obama's a Muslim.
Yeah.
It's almost as funny as Obama trying to act like he's a Christian.
Yeah.
Did you see the triple whammy they pulled on Gaza, where they dumped all of their sewage into their bay, then flooded them, and then shut their electricity off?
Yeah.
I heard that there was something about the dams being opened up.
Yeah, they purposely opened up the dams and flooded a whole neighborhood, displacing hundreds of people who were probably already displaced. Infants froze to death this winter because they were made homeless by the so-called Operation Protective Edge. So,
yeah, I mean, look at the after effects. Not to even mention the fact it was like over 200 children.
500.
Over 500 children were killed by the Israeli forces in Operation Protective Edge, and they kept on saying that Hamas was using children as human shields. Well, what are they? If you weren't dropping bombs, they wouldn't have to be shielding anybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just another one of these talking points that is basically made up as well.
But it's like these guys ignore some basic facts. So, first of all, Obama is probably the worst Muslim ever. If he loves Muslims so much and he's giving them hugs with drone missiles, so he's obviously the worst Muslim in the world if he is. He also, being the worst Muslim in the world, he's also keynote speeched at APAC conferences. So that's a pretty horrible Muslim. He's been to Israel. Did the whole thing. He also has a big donor named by the name of Haim Sabin. Or Sabin. So there was an article by Alternate and a couple other people about Haim Sabin and Sheldon Adelson. And they're two big pro-Israel billionaires. Sheldon Adelson's like a kind of casino mogul, and they plan on influencing the 2016 presidential election with billions of dollars so that we can have a war in Iran and ignore the genocide of Palestine. I mean, that's what it is. It's a genocide. So Sheldon Adelson gets the Republican right-wing side, and Haim Sabin gets the the pseudo-left, Democratic side.
Or Soros.
So this is all a bunch of political theater to make you think that the Democrats are still anti-war, play into the two-party system, vote for the Democrats, and they'll still end the wars as people try to say Obama would in 2012.
Yeah, and then on the other side of things, you got the right-wing talking point, which is basically Obama's too soft on Israel with Israeli policy. He's too soft on Iran. He's too soft on ISIS. And so the talking point you're going to see coming from the right, the superficial right, as we go into 2016, is that, well, vote for us if you want to be strong on foreign policy and if you want to stop terrorism and if you want to get a little more Islamophobic, then support us and we'll do that for you. But the fact of the matter is that Obama is not weak on Israeli spending. He's giving just as much as any other president, if not more. $30
billion over 10 years, and that's more like all these people are like, oh, Obama's so anti-Israel. When was the last time that Breitbart gave $30 billion to Israel? I think they got owned.
there's actually foreign policy, and then there's actually the sitting cabinet and the guy in charge right now's policy, which they differ completely. And you can tell because I sent Nick an article and I vetted it. It's pretty legit that if Israel was trying to bomb Iran earlier last year and we actually told him, listen, if you guys go through with this, we're going to shoot you guys' planes down. That's the sitting administration saying that. So is he an enemy or an ally of Israel? You know what? Whatever suits whoever's in charge that day is what goes. And right now is not an opportune time to go after Iran because Syria still exists. But I guarantee you, as soon as Assad's out of there, Israel's going to get the green light against Iran whenever they want.
I saw the article, like, saying that, and it comes from like this, pretty much it's even more extreme as far as this right wing propaganda goes than the Jerusalem Post, and it's like, they have to jump like 3 or 4 different hoops to say that Obama allegedly gave that order. So it's like,
and I doubt he did. Yeah, I'm sure
it's very shoddy.
There's like a rift. Yeah, it seems to me what's going on right now is there's like a rift going on. Like there's certain things the government wants to do, and there's guys within the military that are basically at this point like, well, ever since you guys put the voting machines in, things aren't really legit, so we know you guys are not following the public's opinion at all anymore. They just, whoever they want gets in no matter what now. So you're a perfect example, man. Why didn't you get like 5,000 votes more than the shill who won? I mean, you could never win because you're the wrong voice. They don't want that voice, but we got to take that back somehow. And I like the phone voting idea's got to start at some point.
Yeah, man. Definitely got to get a more transparent way of voting, because right now it's, even if you don't, even if you believe in voting or whether you do or not, the fact of the matter is, I mean, the vote can be A, manipulated through propaganda, B, it can be directly cheated, through hacking the voting machine or whatever these guys do. But let's get back to this Netanyahu character, because I think he's a real piece of shit.
Yeah.
I think he's a lot worse than Obama, because I think Obama is more of, on a superficial level, he's just like a face of the empire. But I think Netanyahu is definitely more into the inner workings of this horrible machine.
Yeah, he's sadistic as hell.
And he's a real evil guy. And, one interesting fact that I ran into a week or two ago was that most of his money that was coming in to help run his campaign wasn't coming from Israeli public or Israeli even companies. Most of the money was coming from big donors in the U.S.
Like Sheldon Adelson and Haim Saban. And actually, Haim Saban is like, oh, I'm supporting this opposition candidate to Netanyahu. His name's like something Herzog. This guy goes and he has a speech. He says Netanyahu wasn't brutal enough on Gaza. He said that Netanyahu should have been more brutal and killed more children. And he's proud of that. And this is the supposed center-left candidate.
And then I saw an article run today on a right-wing site basically talking about Netanyahu's approval rating among Americans. So they were careful not to mention his approval rating in Israel, because his approval rating in Israel is pretty terrible, actually. The people of Israel are rejecting his policies very much in the same way that people of the U.S. rejected Bush. Now, we talked about this a couple weeks ago regarding Israeli politics. It probably is going to be unfortunately, a similar situation to what the U.S. got into in 2008 with Obama, where it was like, yeah, we all hate Bush. We could all recognize that, at least most of us. And then they feed you somebody like Obama that's basically a Trojan horse.
Controlled opposition.
You think it's a progressive, you think it's anti-war, and then it turns out, oh no, it's just a Bush with a new costume.
Yeah, basically. With a blue tie.
Yeah, and so basically, that's what I'm fearful, because Netanyahu, I don't think there's any way in hell that he's going to be his political career at the level he's at now is going to continue on. But what I fear for is that his replacement is just going to be more of the same, just like you were mentioning, that other candidate is just going to do the same exact thing.
And it's kind of like a similar... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we always like to say that the hypocrisy in the U.S. is to the extreme, but it's to the really extreme in Israel. And I mean, this guy's the supreme hypocrite. One of the things he was saying in his speech is he brought up that Iran is a backward and regimented society where women, minorities, gays, or anyone not deemed to be a true believer is brutally subjugated. I mean, that describes your country, Netanyahu.
Yeah. And Saudi Arabia spends $10 billion a year promoting Wahhabism, which most Muslims, both Sunni and Shia, consider to be not Islam, and that's the ideology of ISIS and Al Qaeda and all these other U.S. and Israeli and Saudi-backed group. They're like an unholy trinity. The U.S., Israel, and Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia beheads women in Mecca, and being someone who is Muslim and knows a little bit, the Prophet really forbade shedding any blood, let alone that of women, near the Kaaba. And they, send bloggers to jail. They sentence Shia clerics to death and fund all this kind of stuff. Then this is a good point of Shia Sunni unity is that they're both fighting against ISIS in Iraq. That's funded by Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia is actually going to let Israel have air bases there, so they can have less flyover time to go and bomb Iran. So Saudi Arabia wants the oil in Iran, and Israel wants to take out Iran for their own reasons. So they have this the enemy of my enemy thing. So if they want to talk about repression, they should talk about their ally Saudi Arabia first.
Do you think that what's going on with Russia right now, when it will spill over to the Middle East, is going to be like all these other countries ganging up on Saudi Arabia and Israel together? Because that's what it seems like. It's kind of getting set up.
I mean, can't complain.
That's just the craziest, guys. That's the craziest thing I can think of, and I think what people are going to find out is that the British monarchy kind of like bred themselves into the Saudi Arabian monarchy so much.
Oh yeah,
that they're basically usurpers now, and everybody knows it. But they have this secret police force over there. That's it's a Gestapo. Nobody can do anything.
Oh yeah, but there was a thing about like a woman who got raped and she got the jail sentence. So it's like but taking it back to how the kind of political paradigm in Israel kind of plays into I think the Democrats are worse than actually the Republicans, who are open about their stuff. But a lot of these Democrats, and I fully believe, people should still skip the speech, and we should still push this whole thing, to get Congress to ignore the thing, with the hashtag or whatever. But a lot of these Democrats who are skipping the speech, who are pretending to speak out against Netanyahu, are the same people who voted for the foreign aid that went to kill all these people. So they won't do it when it counts, but they'll do it for this political theater. Like, for example, Dianne Feinstein said that Netanyahu is arrogant when he says he speaks on behalf of all Jews, and that's I agree with her completely, 100%. That Zionism is antithetical to Judaism and everything like that, and there are plenty of Jews around the world who oppose this. But she's a hypocrite. So it's like the actions don't match the words. She voted for this stuff. She's a big supporter of Israel's policies and demonization of Palestinians. So there's this hypocrisy, and it's the same with Obama. Joe Biden said, you don't have to be Jewish to be a Zionist. I'm a Zionist. A lot of his foreign policy advisors, whether it be Kissinger, Brzezinski, or Robert Gates, or all these other cats, are all Zionists. So it's like, these are facts that the right-wing media is purposely ignoring, to say that Obama is this and that. And I wrote an article for Mint Press News about this electronic intifada did that for Palestinians. There's no rift between Obama and Netanyahu, just like, the whole notion of, there's no difference between Republicans and Democrats in Iraq or Afghanistan. It's like they don't care whether it's a Republican or a Democrat bomb dropping on them, their family's still dying. Either way.
I mean, look at the Republican-Democrat paradigm here. I mean, we put out a great article by Alyssa, and hopefully she calls in to talk about what's going on in LA right now. But I think that they act like they have all these differences, but when it comes to like this DHS funding bill, the article that we put out was like 10 reasons why the DHS shutdown is the best thing that's never going to happen. Because when it comes down to it, these guys on the all the things that really count, all the things that really do horrible stuff, like the DHS, like the NSA, like the foreign policy, they're all bipartisan, but they act like as if they have some kind of difference. They act like they're not agreeing on things when they really are.
Yeah.
And
well, there's two camps of fascism, Nick. There's like one that's like, hey, let's feed you to death and let me raise your taxes in 95%, and we're going to provide services for everyone. But as soon as you step out of line, you lose everything. It's either that setup or it's the war hawk setup. Let's just go bomb the world. That keeps the economy afloat.
Here's Netanyahu in Congress in 2002. If you take out Saddam, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations in the region. Dun, dun, dun. And now even the leaked cables that were leaked to Al Jazeera and I think The Intercept show that even the Mossad knew that Netanyahu was lying. And Mossad is like known for lying. And actually this is another point of like Saudi Arabia and Israel collaboration. A lot of these like car bombs outside of Hezbollah offices, or like these kind of like like they're basically working with Saudi Arabia to intimidate Iran and Lebanon, and all these kinds of false flags or black ops where it's like an anonymous car bomb. But obviously with the political like if it's outside of a Hezbollah office, who would have a beef against Hezbollah other than Israel and Saudi Arabia? So it's obvious that they do a lot of stuff kind of like the CIA does. So even the Mossad is saying that Netanyahu lied with that stupid cartoon bomb at the UN.
Yeah, and then also you got Netanyahu on record saying that one of the best thing Israel had going for it, I can't remember when he said this, so it was 2003, 2005.
I sent it to you. 2008, I think. It's from Democracy Now! Netanyahu says 9/11 has been good for Israel.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been fighting all their wars. Wasn't that the whole point?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and then the other thing is to keep in mind, like all this shit we just talked about Netanyahu, and how horrible of a person he is and all that stuff. And your Congress that we're paying, I mean, you may not have voted for him, but you're paying for him. Mm-hmm. They got him coming to give a speech. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? He's a guest for our Congress to come give a speech so that he can talk about how bad Iran is and how much we need to send more money over to him.
And send American lives to die for Zionist wars.
Yeah. So
send me drones.
And the worst part about it is that Israel attacked America in the 60s, the USS Liberty. If you just look it up, actually Al Jazeera America ran a special on it recently. A lot of people are writing articles about it. And just from a historical context, before the State of Israel was established, you had Jews, Christians, Muslims, and all kinds of other people living in peace. It was like an international zone of neutrality, and a majority of actually this was before Balfour sent a busload of European Jews over. But the people that were actually living there in the region beforehand, like the Jews, they were living peacefully, and they all opposed the imposition of a Zionist state because they knew that it would be an apartheid state. It's no different than a whites-only drinking fountain. And that's actually, they have segregated buses for Palestinians now, and actually it's like, depending on who you are ethnically, is depending how much rights you get as a citizen. So rather than an international zone of neutrality where everyone's treated equally, as we're, the notion that we're all one, human family and that every human life has equal value. Now it's like you're a certain, ethnicity, you have this much value. You're a Palestinian, you're a subhuman, you're a dog. And this is what a lot of the far right nationalists, Zionists have to say. It's like, and they recently even torched a Christian school or something like that. And you have all these gung-ho Christian Zionists like Rand Paul, Rand Paul, who pandered to CPAC this weekend. Rand Paul stands with a American soldier who fought for Israel and flew a plane that bombed Gaza, and Rand Paul is proud to stand with this guy. So whoever stands with Rand stands with genocide.
Yeah, man. Exactly. So all this division, all this stuff, it's all theatrics, it's all politics. There's no cuts going to the Israeli military. There's no cuts in foreign aid. We're still giving them bombs and drones, and they're still giving us drones and tech and all that crap. They're our partner in the empire. They're our
51st state.
Yep.
Yeah. And
tying into the LAPD thing, like LAPD actually and NYPD went over to Israel, got training, and actually, like you mentioned, the no cuts to aid. They just sent a bunch of fighter jets. Even when this whole I'm not going to go attend the speech thing's going on, the Obama administration sent some fighter jets over to Israel, and this it's definitely definitely all made to, I think, make the Democratic Party seem like they're still anti-war. So keep supporting the Democrats in 2016.
Yeah, man. It's a perfect segue into this next story here. I'm not sure if Alyssa's going to be able to call in. We are having some dysfunction with our phone system for some reason. If anybody wants to call in, you could still reach us via Skype. It's the anti-media no spaces. So if anybody wants to call in and join the show, feel free to call in, but you can't call through the phone number. It's not working tonight. I'm not sure why. So we're going to try to get all of our guests through Skype. And I know Baran is going to join us on Skype. I don't know who else is going to be able to call in. We're still trying to get Alyssa. Alyssa was there last night in L.A., down at Skid Row, and she witnessed the aftermath of what went on with the gentleman that was gunned down by the LAPD. So I get them confused because they're so similar. The gentleman was gunned down. The video shows very, very aggressive. I mean, these guys just look like a gang that would jump in somebody, and it was frightening. It was very frightening. And the video, I mean, from RevolutionNews.com, from their Facebook page, the video got like 20 million views. We posted on the anti-media, it got over 1 million views. So, I mean, people are seeing it and they're not liking what they're seeing. So, hopefully she's able to call in, but we can kind of go into the story a little bit here. A little bit on the backstory as far as the LAPD. You know, this recent story with Eric Garner and how he got choked out because he was selling loose cigarettes it kind of all feeds into this idea of broken window policing, right? And this is the whole idea that you go around using the cops to bust people up for doing petty crime, like, for instance, selling loose cigarettes. Or part of the reason why this man was gunned down yesterday by the LAPD was because he had a tent set up on the street after 6 a.m. because it's illegal to have a tent after 6 a.m. You got to have it off the ground and you got to be carrying it around with you. But this all kind of goes into this idea of broken window policing. So, you know, you kind of, I guess you start to wonder, okay, well, where does this come from? Well, I don't think William Bratton didn't invent it. Now, William Bratton is now the chief of the NYPD. He didn't invent it, but he definitely started implementing it. And many people don't realize this, but he first started implementing it in Los Angeles because he was formerly the chief of police in LA before he moved over to New York. And a lot of his policies, like, for instance, with this broken window policy, are still being carried out. And so we have to keep that in mind. The other thing is that, you know, this violent murder that we witnessed here, it's not an isolated incident. This kind of thing happens pretty much all the time down there in LA, on Skid Row. And it was only 6 months ago that the LAPD killed another person just a few blocks away from that area.
Can we go with mandatory rubber bullets, I guess, because I guess we're not going to be able to untrain all these guys to respond in a lethal manner to everything now when they should be tasing or pepper spraying most of these people. I mean, yeah, but what was the gun drawn for? Who did that? Who pushed out and shot a guy when there's no need? Rubber bullets for all these guys because they can't be trusted. Oh
yeah. Well, the video, like, they were like, you could hear, like, some people are making excuses. Oh, they said drop the gun. Well, there's a couple you know, ways to look at it. First, like, we had one of our friends talking that there's often covering for you know, fellow coworkers, so they're used to a culture of lying and, you know, like he has drugs, or he has a gun. So there's that, but there's also, like, a lot of former military with PTSD are, you know, let into go into law enforcement so they could just be imagining things from, you know, trauma from what they experienced overseas. You know, there's that, and just because, like, that whole thing that falls apart because he was being tased. It would be pretty hard. First of all, I know cops have, like, special holsters where it's pretty hard to, you know, grab it out, and they only know how to do that through their training. When you're being beat the crap out of, tased, it'd be pretty hard to unholster a gun. So it could be either one of those two things, lying or PTSD or some other thing. And why were they attacking this guy in the first place?
Yeah, it was like,
I don't know. He had a tent set up, and that was illegal, and they told him before to move, and I guess because he was so distinctive that they kept seeing him, and they, you know, it became where they started hassling the guy. I don't know, man. Certain cops get hard-ons for certain people they consider nuisances, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, according to the story that we have at the anti-media that was that Alyssa was able to get a hold of, was that the original reason the cops were called was because there was some kind of altercation. And you know how the cops are, they show up, like, you know, 2 hours late or whatever. This guy had already you know, this altercation had ended, nobody got hurt. This guy was literally laying back down and had gone back to sleep in his tent on the sidewalk, and the cops just roll up on him and basically start putting their hands on him. And he wakes up. You wake up, you're a homeless person living on the street, and someone's putting their hands on you. You're waking up and you're swinging. You know what I mean? You're not just waiting around to find out who it is. So that's basically what happened. And then I'm not saying that he swung on the cops, but basically that's he was startled by the cops rolling up on him like that. And then it just, instead of the cops de-escalating, like we talk about multiple times, they just sent a whole squad of guys out there to go beat this guy down and tase him down and arrest him or whatever. And then we saw what happened after that. So, this is just total arrogance, total police statism. And, when's it going to stop? And obviously, this thing in LA has stirred up a lot of emotion because it was just such a brutal scenario, and there was actually a good video of it. And the witness, according to an article I saw on CNN, of course it's CNN, so can't take it too seriously. But the witness who took the video is basically disputing what was said on the video. He's saying that the guy wasn't reaching for the gun. Of course, there's no way of telling if that guy was close enough to even see what was going on. But at least one witness is already saying, no, he was not reaching for the gun. The cops are just saying that to excuse the fact that they gunned this guy down. And they tased him multiple times. I don't know if you heard in the video, but the guy that was one of the people behind the camera was basically saying, "Oh, they're tasing him again," or maybe it was the woman that was on the camera. They were saying they're tasing him again, and so this is just another example of this arrogant police state, and it just keeps resurging. And of course, we got that news last week, last Tuesday on Homan Square, and this to me is like probably one of the biggest stories of 2015. I know this story is going to get a lot bigger. Ever since the one story was posted out of Chicago by The Guardian, there's already been multiple different witnesses, at least 6 of them, maybe more, that have stepped forward and have begun speaking out about their experience at Homan Square, why they were sent there, how they were sent there, how long they were there, how they were treated. And the fact of the matter is, man, these people are being treated like terrorists. They're being tortured. They're being refused due process. These very essential protections that are supposed to be a major part of living in a free country, which is due process. I mean, I can't really name any supposedly free country that doesn't have due process. So the government has now decided they're going to start removing due process. And they've been doing it for a long time, and a lot of groups never really benefited from the full protections of the Bill of Rights and all that stuff. But now it's coming out in the open. Nobody's immune from it. And the big question that I posed today in the article I did on the Anti-Media is, where is the next Homan Square? You know that there's going to be more of them.
Probably already have them.
Yeah. I mean,
It's probably right there, Nick.
I mean, do we have one here in San Diego? How many do they have in LA? How many do they have in Detroit? How many do they have in Boston?
We have one right here for sure, waiting for the particular population from Africa to start some crazy stuff happening. I mean, I know that for sure.
Well, aren't like immigration detention centers already kind of like that? Because, you don't get rights if you're not a citizen.
Yeah. A lot of these immigrants that are coming up from south of the border are being detained in these, we saw those camps they had set up in those warehouses, all those people stuffed in there, treated like animals. And, animals shouldn't even be treated that way.
Yeah.
And that's the amnesty. You know what I mean? That's amnesty.
Oh, yeah. And that's the right-wing media, that's amnesty, yeah. Throwing a bunch of people in detention centers that mirror basically what people just would describe as FEMA camps. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they call that amnesty. But, this Homan Square thing, and, we were we were a big part of this, the process of trying to organize an opposition to this. And I think there is a pretty big outcry, and the protest down in Chicago is pretty big and pretty effective. So I think we just have to continue this pressure, that we're putting on these politicians, and sooner or later we're going to have to start getting answers. And if we don't start getting answers, as we've predicted before, people, authorities are going to get hurt. And I'm not advocating for that or saying that's what should happen, but that is exactly what's going to happen. If you look back at those two NYPD cops that were recently killed, which caused that huge controversy, the guy that did it said on Instagram, the reason I'm doing this is for Eric Garner, right? And so if these politicians, these bureaucrats, whatever you want to call them, it's fine that they think they can keep getting away with this shit. They think that they can keep operating facilities like Home and Square. They think they can keep gunning people down in the streets like the LAPD just did. That's fine if they think that, but unfortunately, they're going to be the ones that are going to be experiencing the blowback. And if anything, if all of this stuff, looking at foreign policy from a different perspective, if anything, it's going to teach you about blowback.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be blowback, and for every action, there's a reaction. Every time you try to crush a dissident, it springs up a bunch more. Anytime you try to bully people with the cops, you end up with 10 times the amount of people that you got to deal with because they're going to come and stand up against you. And that's what's going to happen if these guys keep getting away with this stuff without being held accountable. People are going to get extremely pissed off. You're going to have 100 Dorners running around at the same time, and then they're really going to have their hands full. And then they're really going to, we thought it was bad when Dorner was what happened in LA when they were locking down the city, shooting up the wrong cars, shooting people, the wrong people, almost a martial law type of scenario. That's what's going to happen. You got 10, 20 Dorners running around at the same time. You're going to see those kind of scenarios where they're going to have widespread areas that are going to be under tight control. That's almost going to look like martial law.
But that's what they want, see? So we got to figure out some other way to maybe block the ports even after they get the deal signed.
Yeah, I mean, the only way that these idiots at the top hear anything is when it hits them in the pocket, or in the shorts.
And that's like going back to Israel, there's like the BDS movement, the boycott, divestment, sanctions movement. And part of that was they blocked Israeli shipping company, the Zim, and it cost them millions of dollars just for the boat sitting out in the harbor for 30 minutes past its deadline. Millions of dollars. That's a great way to. But I think there's only a handful of people that really are, engineering this police state at the very top. They just pay people with employment. You put bread on the table to follow our orders. If we can convince those people that we're all one human family and you shouldn't be treating us in an us against them scenario, if one day, and this is a long shot, of course, people in the LAPD, what if one day, like slowly but surely, the Oath Keepers movement, comes in and they realize they shouldn't be unloading clips on their brothers and sisters in humanity. Like, the people at the top are screwed because nobody's going to follow their orders. But it's a multifaceted thing. But, just the whole thing, like, you wouldn't, if you really believe that everybody was your brother and sister in humanity, you wouldn't be doing this crap at all.
Yeah, exactly. We have Baran Hines on the line now from whatthefreally.com as well. And he also works with us at the Anti-Media. I know you're on the line there, man. How you doing? All right, maybe he can't hear us yet. We've been having some difficulties here with our phone system for some reason. Also, anybody else that wants to join the call, feel free to join us on Skype. It's the Anti-Media with no spaces. Once again, our phone system is down. Now, the point of the article that I wrote this morning about Home and Square is, asking the question is, okay, are there more sites like this out there? But the other part of the article was that we're looking for people to step forward and talk about this stuff. And if you want to do it and remain completely anonymous, we can work that out. If you need to email us, just Google it and find out how to email someone anonymously. And we're not going to try to
encryption,
leak your information or anything like that. Privacy, journalism is of the utmost importance for us. We would never give away our sources. I literally would go to jail before I'd give up a source.
You would literally go to Mexico before anything would happen.
Yeah.
Party, TJ,
or maybe Norway, man, because Norway actually protects its journalists.
Thunderbird is a good email app where you can use encryption on any email, even a Gmail address you have. You just attach an encryption key to it, and even Gmail can't decode it. But I was watching, just a brief part of Citizen 4, and even like that, like like so you definitely want to make sure that your key is not public on your email signature or anything like that. You basically do your best you can. You know, some people are more technologically advanced, but it's easy to research.
Yeah, we just got to get these young people that are technologically more advanced than we are
To stop working for the government and work for the people.
I mean, you're only what? How old are you?
23.
23 now?
And I'm not that technologically advanced.
Yeah. You're still, when it comes to this technology stuff, you're still kind of old. Look at Andrew Demeter from Team Tape.
Yeah,
he's
man.
only like 16, 17, and he's just killing it with these videos. His John McAfee interview was amazing. I don't know if anyone saw that, but it was a lot about this whole privacy issue and all that.
Well, there's gonna be this time, this little window where we're gonna be able to like hack into everything and expose everything, and then they're gonna expect like us to take action. That's what our generation is, Nick. We're gonna take action when the younger ones all, hey, we found all this dirty shit.
Yeah, you know, it's that's what we need is these young people that know how to do it to help us out. Those are the ones that are really going to be able to benefit from all the work we're putting in right now. You know, unfortunately, it may be too late for us people that are in their mid-20s and anyone older than that. It may be too late for us. I mean, we've already wasted a bunch of our life paying into Social Security and all this crap that we're never going to get. So hopefully for the younger people, they can actually have a chance at freedom and economic and social freedom in the future, and hopefully we can end the drug war before this younger generation, you know, becomes 18, so that they don't have to get thrown in prison over marijuana.
Just decriminalize everything. That's all we got to do.
And you know, even the hard stuff, heroin, cocaine, even meth. I hate meth. I think it's the most horrible thing I've seen. People very close to me get destroyed by it, but I still don't think it should be illegal, because making it illegal doesn't help anything. It makes it worse. Making it legal would actually allow people to get medical treatment for it a lot easier, and instead of being treated like criminals, they get treated like health patients, you know, health issues, and they can have, you know, a doctor and a nurse help them out, or rehab or whatever. Like,
Well, what if you did it in a clinical environment, Nick, and it was just like all controlled, and then they could use the data for people that actually became addicted, like on the streets. So if you wanted to come in legally, you'd be all basically part of a big study.
Yeah, and it's also like an education thing, like, you know, and a kind of like a morality thing. Like, keeping it out on the streets makes it so it's like attractive, but if you put it in that kind of setting, it, like, you know, it takes people away from ruining their lives, because people are in that situation of using drugs because their lives are ruined by getting busted for drugs, and so it's this cycle. So by making it legal, you get more people off of drugs, which is, you know, we don't want people on certain drugs are misunderstood, like cannabis and psychedelics. Of course, you know, there's a lot of benefits to those, but, you know, the harder stuff, you know, people are going to do it, you know, if they want to do it, but if it's legal, it's easier to get off of, because you don't have to hide from the law to seek treatment, like prostitutes who continuously get raped because they can't go to the police.
Yep. And, you know, this kind of ties right back into Home & Square, because one of the most brutal instances here that we documented, and this is why we were gonna have Cassius come on tonight, but now that our phones aren't working, he doesn't have Skype, he can't call in, so I'm gonna have to go ahead and talk about what he was gonna talk about. But it tied right back into this whole drug war, because there was a gentleman that was taken into Home & Square without due process. He was kidnapped and he was tortured. Why? Because he had 5 pounds of cannabis. He was caught with 5 pounds of cannabis, and for that he was tortured for days.
Like tortured?
Literally taken to Home & Square. They were saying that one of the guards literally stomped on his genitals and as if he were putting out a cigarette, if you know what I mean, twisting it, you know, horrible, gruesome things. And he was tied up, and he was tied up with his arms up, and they turned up the heat, deprived him of water. I mean, they're literally torturing people, and I hate to say it again, but we talked about this a few weeks ago when we did this protest, this national protest against torture. We talked about this. The torture, we speculated that it was coming home and that it was already happening in the prisons and stuff, but now it's been proven. Now it's confirmed that torture is happening here. Guantanamo is home to roost, and that is what Home & Square is all about. And we have to do our jobs as people that give a damn, and we got to find out. First of all, we got to shut down Homan Square. We got to shut down Chicago's policies, because apparently, according to an article I read today on Ben Swan, according to some of the lawyers for these people, it's not just happening in Homan Square. It's happening all over Chicago.
Where's the ACLU in all this? Where's the ACLU? Why are they not already getting a freaking case going for not only this, but wherever they are, every major city?
I'm sure they are.
You guys should email them.
And this stuff is pretty high. Is pretty secretive stuff, because you got to remember that a lot of this had to do with the NATO 5. A lot of this stuff, the NATO 5 was a very controversial group, because you remember the NATO protests back in 2012 were huge. They had like 10,000 people out there for days on end trying to shut down the NATO conference. And then that's when the police just started brutalizing people, disappearing dozens and dozens of activists. Now we're finding out a lot of them ended up going through Homan Square. So what we got to do is we got to shut down Homan Square. We got to hold this Rahm Emanuel character, and this ties back into our original topic, which is Israel.
His father was part of one of the terrorist groups that helped to create, bomb Israel into existence.
Yeah. The mayor of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel, his father was a Jewish extremist. He was a Jewish terrorist. And that's
from like the Ergen or Stern gang, one of those groups.
Yeah, nobody really wants to talk about that, but he's Obama's guy. He was in the Obama administration.
Another Zionist.
He became mayor, and so they're trying. Of course, it goes back to Obama hates Israel. Okay, that's why his one of his administration staff members is a son of a Zionist terrorist. And now he's the mayor of Chicago, and Obama basically he was anointed, more or less. Mm-hmm. And so we got to hold this joke accountable. We got to hold all these guys accountable. And if anybody out there wants to step forward and talk to us about any other sites they know of, you know someone that works at one, you work at one, your spouse works at one, we'll keep it secret. We won't expose your identity. Email us tips@theantimedia.org. Now, I think we are joined by Baran Hines from whatthefreally.com. You there, man?
See if he's on mute.
I am. How's it going?
Right on. How's it going?
Thanks for joining us. Baran's from whatthefreally.com and theantimedia.org. So we're just getting over this Homan Square stuff, getting ready to shift it up a little bit to some international news that's going on. There is one big story that hasn't been talked about very much, but
before we get to that, I wanted to comment on what you guys were talking about. I think it's actually interesting that we're kind of at this point. People talk about what to do, and there was this article that was written a couple of weeks ago. Brandon Smith at altmarket.com. It's called Understanding the Fear of Self-Defense and Revolution. And it talks about how people are really programmed in this generation and to consider any sort of self-defense as a form of violence. And it's gone essentially way too far to the point of apathy. It's had help from other things, but I think that's particular where we're at.
Yeah, man. I mean, people.
Hello.
It's just like a boiling point to me, going all over in every sector. And this Homan Square stuff started putting people over the edge, and then now this LAPD thing is just going crazy. Looks like we're also joined on the line by Bobby Rodrigo. How's it going, man?
Good. How are you guys doing tonight?
Pretty good. Just getting into some of this international news right now. We got Baran Hines from What That Really on the line, as well as Ali Salam from here in San Diego. You also work with Free and Equal, mm-hmm. And then he's also the mastermind behind Free Encinitas. He ran for many years as an independent as well. He didn't win, but he got a lot of good votes, and he helped change the debate. We actually talked about police militarization.
Scare the pants off some politicians, one of which got a free trip to Israel from a lobby group down here.
Yeah.
So
Baran, we're getting a little short on time here. We got about 10 minutes left of the show. There is a big story out of Turkey that I know you wanted to talk about. and it's an American journalist. I believe her name is Serena Shim, and she's an American journalist. She did work for Press TV, which is an Iranian-backed news outlet, but she was killed or she died in Turkey under pretty suspicious circumstances, and for some reason or another, the corporate media has completely decided not to report on this, even though it's an American journalist killed. And we all remember what happened when ISIS beheaded a journalist. It was, the news story for an entire month. So what's going on with this story, and why do you think that it's just not being talked about by anybody?
I think the most important part is just like you said, that it's not being talked about. And when you consider why it's not being talked about, it leads you into too many tangents to cover on any kind of news program. So, that's part of what went into this article was I tried to make a simplified version of there's, hundreds of details, thousands of details in some cases. And it's the same old whys. It's money, it's power, and at the root, it's corruption. And at this point, what's happened is basically Turkey's in a really bad position of being the next door neighbor to Syria right now. As bad as that sounds, their country's not in the war necessarily, but Turkey has had problems because of it. Riots, protests at the reaction from the Turkish government. Then there's the consideration of the Kurds on the other side of the border, both in Syria and Iraq. And if you add all that up, the problem is that all this talk of the rebels in Syria and who they really are is lost. It just becomes sound bites on television because nobody really understands the groups that are part of this and where these people come from. But what's happened is that so many things have come across the border from Turkey into Syria, mostly foreigners that are, mercenaries, at best. If you're thinking of it in terms of criminality, if your neighbor is doing a lot of illegal things that, might end up spilling over onto your property, you'd be concerned about it. And essentially what's happened is so many hands are in the covering up of what's happened in terms of resources, weapons, money, fighters moving across the border. No one wants to get caught holding the bag. And Turkey shares a long border with Syria. So this is the whole problem that doesn't really get discussed as to where this war is really even coming from. So Serena Shim, she worked for Press TV out of Iran, and she had been across the region before, left and came back, basically. And what she was explaining to, she went on Press TV October 17th to explain to the anchor that Turkish intelligence had basically marked her as a target. They were investigating her. They said that she was basically a spy, and she essentially asked for help, by going public. And, she hired a lawyer to basically keep anything, serious from happening to her. And 2 days later, she turns up dead in a car crash, in a very strange car crash. Now, she claimed to have video footage of these rebels moving across the border. And basically, these rebels are now confirmed linked to ISIS, or are part of ISIS in that sense. And what no one's seen the video. It disappeared after the crash. It doesn't. She doesn't strike me as the type of person that would lie about something like that, especially because she was in the area telling the story of the war from the Turkish side, which was kind of forgotten. And for what you said about the beheadings with the other journalists, it's been left completely, undiscussed. In the article, I linked to a couple of State Department briefings, one from the next day on the Monday after her death. And one about a month later, basically, where they said we have no comment and literally never addressed it again. And only a few major outlets covered it. Fox News actually wrote a piece. They wrote something about 2 weeks later. I think there was a Reuters piece on it that Huffington Post picked up. But other than that, it's very, very buried.
Very scarce info, and which makes us kind of suspicious. And I mean, let's face it, she was probably taken out by the Turks because they didn't want her blowing the whistle on the fact that they were letting ISIS go through to and from Syria through Turkish borders. And then we ask, okay, well, why?
Turkey's a big U.S. ally.
Why is Turkey allowing ISIS to go to and from? Well, because Turkey is the one that is going to benefit, one of the biggest beneficiaries of this pipeline that they're trying to build, that Assad had been blocking for the longest time because Russia doesn't want the pipeline being built, because Russia wants to maintain their monopoly on Ukraine. This whole thing is all about
standing in the way of the whole new reworked pipeline distribution of the Middle East to Europe. It's they can't get away from Russian gas, and at this point, the only options are to build new pipelines from the sources that are haven't been previously exploited. And at this point, Assad is still standing in the way of that. The really sad thing is that you can't tell who's done it, because it could be anyone at this point that has an interest in it, because everyone else looks just as guilty. And
they're doing that on purpose.
Exactly.
They do that on purpose. They keep stirring that pot. What you've described essentially is the plot to A World Is Not Enough, a James Bond movie. It's exactly what the story was about. If you remember, rerouting the pipeline for the Muslim community because it had been co-opted, for example, the same way you're describing that Assad was blocking it. It's amazing how these little things connect when it comes to Hollywood sometimes.
I mean, programming.
They've told the story in other movies too. Syriana is a good movie.
Sure.
That shows the inner workings of the oil business in a lot of ways. I mean,
What about Lord of War?
Yeah, I mean, it's all just like that. The entire thing is dirty, and she had concrete proof of this, because there was really no other explanation of the proof that she had that she described, other than some kind of Western manipulation, whether it was by commission or omission.
Exactly.
Was it not Turkey directly rearming ISIS?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
too many people have rearmed ISIS, and that we know of. I mean, it's been reported. Qatar spent about $3 billion over 2 years giving money and resources to what became ISIS. It flourished in Iraq under the guise of the scaled down force that is supposed to watch over Iraq, or whatever you want to call it. And not to even really get into foreign policy, it's complete willful blindness. There's no other explanation other than Turkey, Israel, the U.S., and by extension the Western intelligence powers.
I couldn't agree with you more. We're coming up to the end of the show here. But one thing I wanted to mention before it's over, this isn't conspiracy theory anymore. We just covered this recently on the anti-media. Oil-rich countries, resource-rich countries are 100 times more likely to be involved in a foreign-backed war of sorts, whether it's a civil war or an outright invasion like we did in Iraq. This is just more of the same. This has become predictable. A place like Syria, they may not have all the resources that themselves, but they are a key centerpiece in creating this new world order when it comes to the oil pipelines in the Middle East. And since they're blocking it, well, they had to go. ISIS, they tried to overthrow the country directly, didn't work. Well, ISIS is the most convenient next best thing. And they were able to sell it via these beheadings of the journalists. Obviously, they don't give two shits about American journalists that aren't working for the propaganda machine, that aren't going to benefit American propaganda, because the Sharina Shim story is a perfect example of total hypocrisy. Make sure you guys look up Sharina Shim, whattheFreally.com. It's also on the anti-media. Bobby Rodrigo from the Coffee Party. Thanks for calling in. Sorry we couldn't talk too much.
No problem. Guys, have a good night.
Yo, here we go,
Thanks
through
to
the
the Manny.
stereo,
Shout out,
stereo.
man. Sorry you couldn't call in.